we got to come on your amazing podcast, Baby Mamas, no dramas last week. We are so excited to have you today on Shrink Chicks.
Okay, so since you're not our therapist, like we're allowed to be friends, right?
Yes,
absolutely,
exactly.
100%.
Yeah. Right, so we're gonna hang out. We're all gonna be friends.
Also, having therapist friends are the best because then they just give you free therapy.
Okay, that's also a bonus. That's a really
we can't help
point.
ourselves.
But let's start out. If you have watched Teen Mom 2, you know these amazing women here. But for those people who haven't seen it before, we want to know. Tell us a little bit about your stories and the two of yours relationship together because it's a great story.
Oh, is it a great story?
I think it's a great story.
Is it a great story?
It is, yes.
I met Vee in like 2011, 2012. Yeah. She started dating my first son's dad. And it did not start off well. It didn't start off easy at all. We really didn't like each other. And I think I was just really, really upset. Not her specifically, but like I didn't want Joe, but I didn't want anyone else to have him. We just had a kid together. We were super young. We didn't like each other. And then one day we just decided that this is not working and we need to do better. And we became friends. And then years and years later, now we have a podcast together.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, so there's closer and closer.
There's that great meme going around right now that's like, oh, all these podcasts are two best friends. I want to see two bitches that hate each other. And
posted that. It's funny because she posted that on her Instagram story yesterday, and I literally saw it right before I saw you posted it, and I was gonna send it to you, and I forgot. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we need. But there was a podcast like that before.
Frenemies,
the Frenemies podcast. And that didn't really end well. So.
Right. As they usually don't. But you clearly, the two of you really worked through that challenging time in your relationship. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you manage that? What did that look like for the two of you?
There was a turning point that we both didn't know resonated with us the same way. Mm-hmm. So we hated each other so much. And Joe had said to me at one point, like, if anything happens to me, my kids will never be able to see each other because you guys hate each other so much. So it was, Joe made a really good point. Like, mm-hmm. I wasn't going to make arrangements with Vee for Isaac to see their daughter, like that. We didn't like each other.
Yeah, we weren't about to do that. So we kind of just took that and we're like, wow, he makes a really great
point. But he
point.
said it to her too, and we didn't know.
Yeah, he said it to me too. And then when we when we started I think it was a little before we started the podcast, we came to talking about it, and I was like, she was like, well, he told me this, and I was like, well, he told me that too. So it was kind of like everything came together, and we were like, wow. So that was the kind of the turning point for both of us, and it was insane.
Yeah.
Now, I would say most people that end up co-parent together don't always start on the best foot, right? Like, the story you're telling is not an atypical story. It's an incredibly complex and nuanced relationship to sit here and say, I have like very complex and complicated feelings towards this other person. You have an intimate relationship with them. There is rejection, there's jealousy, there's so many emotions that can come up from it. And so I think there's a lot of people listening right now that have tried to blend their families together. And you guys are talking about this really great thing, but what would it actually look like to really go from hating each other to co-parenting?
Oh my God.
Well, because I actually don't co-parent like this with my other kids' dads. And so, I don't think that we'll ever get to this place. And so I understand now even still how hard it can be. Mm-hmm. Because I try to have that mindset, but I also know that we're just not compatible in that way. And so unfortunately it won't work, but I don't know like what it took for us to actually, like, we realized what Joe was saying, but I don't know.
I think just honestly, we were really young. I think it's really important to understand, like, when we first came into me dating Joe and stuff, like, we were all so young. Like, I'm talking like 18, 19, 20, so we've all kind of grew together in a way, which I think really, whether people think about it or not, it really takes makes a big difference, and it also, like, we've all kind of, even if we were on different pages at times, I feel like at the end of the day, we're always like, we're all kind of like a team, like, we all have to do what's best for the kids. And sometimes it does mean like putting your emotions or like how you feel not to the side, but, trying to see the bigger picture. So I think we're always kind of like on that same page. Well, we try to be, we're still human, but I think at the end of the day, we do a pretty good job at like doing that.
Well, and the other thing that you left out, I think that's so perfectly said. And the other thing that's interesting you left out, which is you weren't just, 18, 19 years old. You were also being filmed.
Right. You were in the public eye
So
at a very vulnerable age and a very vulnerable time, it sounds like, in your families. And so tell us what that was like, not just being at that age and working through that, but also being in the public eye during that time.
It's hard. It's still hard now because people to this day bring up when I like came at Vee's neck for so many things, and they're like, oh, it's fake, it's this and that. And it's like, no, we've actually worked through this, and I understand like why people would think that, but it's really hard when we've gotten through things that were really hard in the moment, and then we have to relive them on TV. And then maybe some of the same emotions came up when we originally went through it, but then sometimes other emotions come up and we're like, fuck, like, what is this? How do we get through this? It's like reliving, like ripping a Band-Aid off a wound that hasn't healed yet. And it's just it's not a good time. And I mean, I think I'm in therapy still from filming. And
it's hard. It's not normal to be going through these things. And then on top of that, have a million people's opinions on everything when your mind is going wild on its own, so.
Right. And I'm thinking about, just as human beings, we think back to times in which maybe we made a mistake or got in a fight, and we can only remember them in our minds. And so, there's like kind of like this faded picture of it. But when you're having to watch it in front of you, and re-experiencing it, would you watch those episodes? Would you keep yourself from watching them? What does that look like on your end?
I was about to say I don't watch the show at all. I think since I have started filming a lot of, I don't watch it.
I have gone through watching episodes because I want to see how it's edited down.
That makes sense.
And my worst moments that I've ever really faced as like an adult and as a mom have been filmed. And it's embarrassing sometimes, it's humiliating. And even if I have gotten over something that I did or a regret that I have, and I've been forgiven by said person or forgive myself, nobody ever, even to this day, like I can think of things in 2012 that happened that I'm still not forgiven for by the public. And so it's not a fun feeling at all.
Well, you bring up this great point about the editing, right? You could be edited to look like the villain, and it's sort of whoever gets chosen. I think that's most people with the reality TV is like, oh, I'm this season's villain. I'm this season's bad guy.
Right. And I say I'm everyone's favorite villain, but in a way that is like misunderstood, not necessarily because I am a villain, but I'm a villain because people do not understand like where I was before the cameras entered my life to, bless you, to where I am now and some of the things that I've done on camera, you know what I mean? And so actually a lawyer just asked me like, why do you call yourself that? And it's like, I'm misunderstood, like Maleficent, right? Like she didn't start off evil. Like she didn't start off this like super bitter person. Yeah. She started off as like a really good fairy or whatever. And then, she's stripped of her wings and her powers. And then she's trying to make a comeback, So it's been a really wild ride.
And no one gets to see the growth too, right? They're seeing these really kind of challenging times when you're so young and you're trying to parent. I mean, that's hard as an adult, right? And so to try to navigate that as a teenager and navigate, challenging, complicated relationships and have everyone watch it, and then for others to not be privy to also your growth in those relationships where they're kind of holding on to this image of you at that time. And so, just to navigate that in the public, I'm just hearing how challenging that must be as you're able to see your growth and you're able to acknowledge your growth. And I know we talked a little bit about that on your podcast. Just that people hold on to that and they have trouble forgiving, like you're saying.
I mean, I had my daughter at 29 years old. I have degrees in human development, masters in family therapy. I was a fucking adult running a business. I've never felt more incompetent in my entire life than motherhood. Right? Yeah. It feels very exposing. So I can't imagine, right? That's 29 after all of this other stuff and with support. I can't imagine doing that at the age that you did and have everyone watching, because if everyone saw my life and my worst moments,
Right, like even now, right? Like,
yeah, I don't want to, yeah, right? Like that's really exposing. But you said this thing, you said people think that you guys are acting.
Yeah.
First of all,
all
you
the time.
guys should get Oscars then because you are very good.
incredible.
Wow.
Wow.
If you were acting in this relationship and you actually hate each other and this is just for film, I think people do not understand how hard that would be to fake it. We run a business together and we have a podcast together, and there's a lot of conversations that are not recorded or that we've decided to not put out because there's some stuff that isn't for everyone and it's not their goddamn business.
Yep.
Same.
That's so funny.
I feel like if we were faking it,
I did a lot of
just would
movies.
never. I honestly would never be able to. I couldn't. I don't know how people think that that's a thing.
That would not be. I think
I would be an actress if I was doing it that good.
Right, if you think back to when you guys first met and had all of these really complex, difficult, negative feelings towards each other, would you have been able to fake it?
No, absolutely not.
That's why we like literally we tried to never see each other. Like I would literally go out of my way to not be around her because I didn't want to be around her. And
I like walked off stage.
Yeah, like we just didn't want to be around each other at all. So if I still felt that way, I would not even be this close to her right now.
No.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, like with the two of you having a podcast together, like what is that like in terms of your relation? Because I know for Emily and I think having a podcast has brought us even closer because we're talking constantly to each other and about deeper shit all the time. So what's that like for your relationship to have a podcast together?
I don't know. I just feel like it was, I don't know what we would do without it. I don't remember what it was like before it, even though it's only been a little over a year. I think we text more. We send each other more bullshit stuff, like articles we read, like funny memes, stuff like that.
We talk about like our, personal
like
stuff too.
her and Joe came over on Sunday and we're just shooting the shit, talking about building and podcasting and all that stuff. And so I don't know, I feel like it's brought us closer together in some ways. I mean, I don't think we ever like overstep boundaries as in terms of like family or anything like that, or but in our personal lives it has brought us together.
Yeah, I think we definitely have gotten closer. Like before we started the podcast, we were, we considered ourselves friends and we were cool. But I think now it's like
a friendship.
I can actually be like, this is my bitch. Like she's my friend. Like ride or die.
Right.
Like,
Yes. Hey man, you need an RTDT. You need a ride together, die together. It is truly incredible. Okay, so I feel like the number one question people have is, what do you think the effect of reality TV is on your personal mental health?
Oh God.
Anxiety.
Imposter syndrome. Because, and this is what I talked to my therapy, she asked me about it this morning. She was like, last week you brought it up, let's talk about it. And I was like, it's not necessarily the reality TV, it's everything that comes with reality TV. So it's, the show Teen Mom 2 really started when the peak of social media was happening, right? Like Instagram, people were on Facebook, but Twitter was really big at the time. And it's the trolls and it's the public opinions and reading what everyone thinks, where like if reality TV started when there was no Instagram and Facebook and social media, we wouldn't have access to read what people's opinions are. So it's not necessarily the reality TV, it's just everything that comes with it, reading comments and dealing with having to, we could choose not to watch the show, but they're going to replay it on social media. They're going to put it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and this and that. And reading what people think is the problem for me.
It's crazy that we talk about that because when I first started dating Joe, I didn't even have an Instagram. Like it wasn't like a thing yet. Like Twitter was the thing.
Yeah.
And like even then it wasn't as bad as like nothing. I just never would have pictured that the show would have such an impact on like social media and stuff. But
you start to believe what people say about your, like you adopt their beliefs, and sometimes it's about other people, sometimes it's about yourself. It's sometimes like I have this like critical voice in my head, I guess, like that talks to me in really, it's really mean, right? Like it's because it's the things that I'm reading every day that people say about me that you start to believe what people are saying.
Right. And I think that happens on a lot of levels, just in our relationships, right? If we get in a fight with someone or they say something about us, that it's hard to be able to create that boundary in our own mind of like, is that actually true, right? Do I believe that? But when you're having so many people say things about you, you know, it would make it that much more important to set those boundaries for yourself, to know this is who I am and I'm going to hold on to that for myself.
Yeah. But I mean, on the flip side of it, it's like the show has been a mirror for me where I can't deny something that I've done that is not right. And I can look at it and say, okay, I actually need to take away a lesson from this. And this is the best thing that could have happened, was me seeing myself do something and how I want to do better. But I will say, like, it's easier to focus on like the negative side effects of being on reality TV.
Right.
Well, I think it brings up this term also that it's coming to mind, is radical responsibility, right? When somebody shows me a part, listen, and like, we've all been the bad person. We're all, at some point, anyone listening, if you're like, oh, this has never been me, it's bullshit, I'm sorry. At every point, right, we all have been, right? Like, at some point, you were the bad guy in somebody's story. Whether it feels real or not, it's true for them. And so this thing of radical responsibility is that, like, okay, if I see this thing and people are telling it, what if there's some truth to some stuff I need to change? And like, this idea that, like, that doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. It means I'm a work in progress. And that's very impressive, to be able to come out and say, like, hey, like, I'm going to hold radical responsibility for this. And also, it doesn't mean I need to hate myself or shame myself, but it means I have to do something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's harder for people that are on reality TV, because when they get to a place where they are accepting that, the public doesn't allow them to.
It just keeps getting brought up and brought up.
Yeah, like it's definitely harder to like move forward.
It makes it seem like all the work that you're doing just doesn't even matter, because people are still either talking about it or trying to shine you in this like horrible light and stuff.
Right.
So how do you guys talk to your kids about it?
Oh, it's been difficult. It's been challenging, I would say, mainly for Isaac, because he's 12.
Yep.
My younger ones are not really there yet. But I do try to take that and implement what I'm learning, like in therapy, from being on TV to like Isaac. And also, you know, I want to give him a voice. If he doesn't want to film and doesn't want to see himself on TV, I also just like don't make him do it. So
yeah.
It's been a work in progress there as well.
I don't think
Do you
Vee
have-
has anything.
Do you think
like,
she?
no idea.
She's too young yet, right?
what's going
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel like there could be a day where someone says to your kids, oh, your mom, right? Like, we'll say whatever about you. I'm imagining that's something you've thought about before, right? Because, you know, you drop your kid off at school, some mom has an opinion of you. I mean, right, listen, like, we live in a world with a lot of judgment. So you know it's happening. What's it like to think about that kind of stuff, or start thinking about having conversations?
I have definitely thought about like, maybe there are going to be parents who don't want Isaac to be friends with their kids because they don't want them around me, or, you know, things like that. But I'm in a place where I can honestly say that I would, if my kid came to me about something that I did or I said on TV or on social media, I would have to face the music and like really just be honest and have that conversation. I think my older two are definitely in a place where they could be receptive and be like, okay, I was wrong when I did this, and here's why, and here's what the takeaway was. Like, I think that they're in a place where we could talk about it, and I feel pretty good about it, to be honest. Like, I think I could use it as a lesson, and not just like do what I say, but like, let's talk about it. So you can do as I do and like take away what I took away. You get what I mean?
Like a learning experience rather than something bad.
Absolutely.
There's something really cool about that, of radical honesty with your kids. Right? Of like, there's a lot of parents who are like, right, like, this isn't one of these questions we always get for parents is like, what do I do when my kid asks if I've ever smoked pot? I'm like, you probably should fucking tell them you smoked pot at some point, right? Like this is like a normal world we live in,
because
where adults
also
smoke
when,
pot and
when
drink alcohol.
they
Like,
start having human reactions or doing human things, it's important for them to know that you're also human, right? That you're modeling that it's okay to be human, it's okay to make mistakes. And so the radical honesty piece of it, I think is such an important piece of parenting too. I'm wondering.
I never thought of that
Definitely. I actually just had this conversation with my best friend the other day, because we both, we have smoked our entire lives. And then after I had Vee Vee, I kind of calmed down a little bit. But I'm never going to be that person that's like, if she asks me what's weed or what's this or do you do it, I'm never going to be like, no, I don't do that. Hell no. I'm going to be completely honest. And I've told my husband this too. I'm like, if I want her to learn anything, I want her to learn from me. And I don't want her to feel like I've lied to her or like find something out somewhere else, you know? So that's something that I'm just very open about, especially you know, as she gets older, like, because I know as a girl I've done a lot of stuff when I was like young, you know, like you kind of just go back to when you were a teenager and shit, and you're like, damn, I've done all these things. And as a girl, I can't imagine Vee Vee doing the stuff that I did, like hanging out in basements with friends and like smoking and shit. I'm like, oh my God, is she gonna go through all this? And like, but like, I want her to be honest with me. Like, I used to really be honest with my mom. Like, this is where I was, this is what I was doing. Like, I was with my friends, like I was safe, you know, like I was in a house or something. And I mean, it doesn't sound completely great, but I mean, I think the honesty that I had with her was something that I want to have with Vee Vee.
Well, I think too, like, I wouldn't want my kids to be sneaky because they think they're going to get in trouble. I would rather them feel good about coming to me and being honest about it. So if they need help, things don't get worse. They're like, okay, my mom's not going to freak out. She's just going to, you know, help me or, you know,
like
do
if
whatever.
she's ever like, I mean, I hope she doesn't get into a position where she's like too drunk to drive or something and like is left stranded somewhere. But like in a case like that, I want her to be able to call me like, Mom, I need help. Like, even if it's 2 a.m, like, can you come pick me up? Like, boom, I'm there, you know?
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And you mentioned safety, right? That like safety is really important. And even if that means that they're experimenting, they're trying things, but they feel safe enough to come to you so that they can create that kind of safe environment for themselves if they ever get themselves into a situation where they need your support.
Absolutely.
Do you think like having the honesty and the I don't want to call it freedom, because obviously wouldn't be like, yeah, go try some drugs.
Yeah.
But like the honesty surrounding it would prevent like overindulging. Like, I guess my question, I don't know if I'm wording
more like
this correctly.
as a best friend or something,
Like,
rather than a parent.
Kids who are exposed to things and are able to be honest with their parents are less likely to, I don't know, say like over drink when they're of age or get into a lot of trouble smoking weed or whatever because they're kind of exposed to it earlier? Or do you think that doesn't really make a difference?
I do. I think it makes a huge difference, right? Like, and here's the thing, is genetics play a part, right? Does someone have genetically predisposition towards addiction? That's going to factor into something. But also in the same way, right? Like, how do I have conversations about like health? And I always think about it in terms of like, this is why abstinence only education doesn't work. Because if we just pretend something isn't real, that is real, kids are going to do it on their own and figure it out. So how do we help kids make healthy decisions, safe decisions? And if that's going to be ethical consumption of a substance, what does that look like for your family? And I think that I realize that people, you know, listening to this might be like freaked out, but also I have never not cursed in front of my child. I'm incredibly open. Everything is named. You know, I'm someone who started having sex at way too young of an age that I'm like when I think back, like I really wish I didn't start having sex when I did. Like there's a lot of things I would have been different. And so I really hope I can encourage my daughter to masturbate. And you know what I mean? Like I would much rather her be having sex with herself than what I was doing for external validation. Because for me, it was about trying to get someone to love me.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm also really big about like her knowing her parts and like knowing the actual names. And I know some people have like a weird complex about this. Like it's been talked about, like people use different names. And I'm like, why would I want my daughter to use a different name that nobody knows what it is if she's trying to tell me something, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, it's abuse prevention, actually. Right. If your daughter is able to say, or your son, these are my testicles, this is my vulva, people are like, oh, these are such weird names. But guess what? If your child says that's an abuser, you don't think that scares that abuser a little bit?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And also that means your child's then able to relay information. So there is a larger conversation about like, what is ethical and honest conversations with your kids? And I don't think it's the right way for everyone. Every family is different. But if you were a mom that's listening to this conversation and thinking like, I think this is the kind of way I want to parent, you have to talk to yourself about like, there's stuff I'm uncomfortable with, which is normal. Because a lot of us didn't get these conversations from our parents.
Exactly.
And I think
I didn't have a sex talk until after I actually don't think I ever had one.
I never had a sex talk.
It was
that
like,
was probably helpful after you were pregnant.
I'm pregnant. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know you were having sex kind of thing. Or, you know, so.
Yeah, I don't think my mom ever knew even when I lost my virginity or anything. Mm-mm. Like I never told her that because I mean, I never had like this sex talk with her. So it was weird for me to relay that information when she never talked to me about it. Mm-hmm. Like it was kind of like a don't ask, don't tell thing for me. It was weird.
Yeah.
And so then who'd you ask? If you had a question, who'd you go to?
I have a big sister. I didn't, so I just had sex.
So I felt more I felt more comfortable talking to my sister than I did with my mom. Because I mean, I no matter how close I was with my mom, I still didn't want her to know I was having sex. Like I just felt, but I do feel like that heavily stems from her never talking to me about it. So that's why I didn't feel comfortable talking to her about that, but also comfortable talking to her about other things.
Right. Yeah. And it might speak to too how comfortable your mom felt talking about sex herself, right? Like, did her parents ever talk to her about it?
Yeah, I don't think she did, because she was never probably talking about it too. And that's where like things we talked about before,
passed down.
Yep. Like inherited trauma and stuff like that. Like that kind of.
Well, it's an interesting thing to also talk about, is that like when I was starting to have sex, there was no Google.
Right.
like right now I'm like, oh, kids.
I remember there were like books. Like I would steal my parents' books.
Oh, would you? Your parents?
Yeah, I had the American Girl.
The Karen keeping of you. The Karen keeping of you.
Yes, my mom gave me this book, but we never talked about what was in it.
It shows you how to put a tamp on it.
Hold on, I'm about to Google it.
I remember that was the first time I saw pubic hair. The Karen Keeping of You by American Girl is the first time I've actually ever seen pubic hair depicted.
I've never. I was shielded from this American Girl.
Look it up.
Yes, that's it. That's the one. I had it. My mom handed it to me, and I was like, what the fuck do I do with this?
Yeah.
The Karen Keeping
of You. And it teaches you like how to put on, and like there's helpful parts. It teaches you that you have to start showering more. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, but that was the first time I ever saw pubic hair, when my mom gave me that book, and I was so scared.
I won't forget this. I don't think I'll ever forget the day Vee Vee saw my pubic hair and like freaked out. My daughter has like 1,000,001 questions, and it always catches me off guard. Like she's so open, like she just will talk. She will say anything. Like she's entirely too much sometimes, but she saw like and she realizes like I have hair down here, like my armpits, and she's got pretty hairy legs too. Like for some reason I feel like she's gonna go through puberty a little early, but she's always asking me like, oh, am I gonna end up having hair like on my vagina and stuff? And I'm like, yeah. Girl, you ain't special. We all got it, and we all gotta maintain it. Like,
yes.
But it speaks to the fact that you are feeling so comfortable talking to her about her body, which is something too that clearly you're changing in your family, which is something we talked about, to almost change the dynamics that are being passed down.
Break all those family cycles.
So I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
Is there any advice that you would give to your younger selves looking back?
Good God. Lots. I also wish that I didn't have sex. I wish I would have asked questions. Like, even though my mom wasn't coming to me about things, I wish that I was asking her questions. It might have been uncomfortable, but I think it would have opened my eyes a little bit more. I think it could have prevented, me having sex younger. I didn't know what masturbating was until I was literally 20 years old. Like I had children before I knew what masturbating was, like things like that. And I think, as an adult now, I'm like, well, if I do it myself, I don't gotta call anybody. So, you know what I mean? Like,
a lot of drama.
It does. It really does. And like, I don't know. I just wish that I would have had more information or resources or somebody that I could talk to as an adult that could give me real, honest information. That's like my biggest advice to other parents, no matter how old they are. Like, talk to your freaking kids. Like, talk to yourself, and help provide your kids with resources if you're not comfortable. Like maybe you can help them. Books, information, resources, therapy. I don't know.
I think I would give my younger self a little bit more grace. I feel like I was always really hard on myself because I felt like I had to hold myself to this standard where my mom was always proud of me and my sister was always, like, I always just felt like a people pleaser. And that caused me a lot of stress and anxiety as an adult, like growing older, like just feeling like you have to be somebody and you don't, like you can make mistakes yourself. And you can be yourself and you can, you don't have to try your best to like work around problems just to like avoid them or anything, like face the music and, just, I don't know. I don't. It's so weird to think about like all the things that you go through when you're younger, and then as an adult, like you just kind of come out stronger. But I wish I had all the advice and like all the resources that I have now.
When and the answer to this might change like by the second for this question. But when you look back now, how do you feel about being on Teen Mom 2?
Oh my God.
That's a loaded question. I'm aware.
Well, so it's loaded for me in that I do wonder where I would be if it wasn't for the show, because my mom's an addict and an alcoholic and my dad wasn't there. So I do wonder, if I didn't get on the show, would I have gone down a completely different path? Would it have been more of a toxic, would I have been an addict or an alcoholic? Would I have gotten involved in things that I shouldn't have gotten involved in? So that's the biggest thing that I ask myself that all the time. I don't know. I don't know.
It's weird for me because my life would have been so different too. I would have never met Joe. I would have never met you, Isaac. I probably would have never had Felice. I probably would have still, I don't know. I honestly, it's so crazy. And I don't like to think about stuff like that because I love where I'm at. I don't ever want to look back and be like, oh, like, to me, it's like a blessing in disguise. As much as we complain about it, or, it's a bitch going through being on reality TV and stuff like that. But I think it gave us so much to be grateful for. So at the end of the day, it's like, I don't regret it. And I met Kail, and like we have this amazing podcast. I feel like everything was literally meant to happen the way it was supposed to happen.
I could go without doing some of the things that I've done on TV.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I wish I had some guidance there.
If we knew social media was gonna be what the fuck it is today,
we
a lot
probably
of the
would have
shit
thought
that we
twice.
wouldn't. Yeah, I think we.
I probably still would have signed the contract though. Like I definitely would have still signed it.
But we wouldn't have thought it was gonna be as crazy. Like, and having fans and like trolls and things like that. Like, I don't think that was like really a thought back then.
Wait,
Kail, social media was so small.
So for you were so young when you signed that contract. Did you have adults in your life you were talking to, or you were just like, I'm going to do this thing? There was no one like, right? Because that's a big contract to sign.
Someone would have been like, nope.
So like, it's so crazy to think about where I am now. Like, I shit you not, I have 5 different attorneys on retainer at all times. And like thinking about my younger self signing this contract without even having an attorney even glimpse at it. And my mom had just signed over custody to Joe's parents at the time. She never even was like, we should probably have a lawyer look at this. And well, because she wouldn't have had $1,500 for them to look over it. You know what I mean? And so, and Joe's parents never said, we should have an attorney look at this. And so it's crazy to think about where I am now. I would never, ever, ever like, I have my attorneys look over literally everything. Like if I could have an attorney check my kids' homework, I fucking would.
I think there are attorneys for that. I think you could find some.
Like sure, it's crazy. And even with my money management from it, if you think about, I'm probably not supposed to say this. I'm going to say it anyway. Cool. I got paid $5,000 to do when I first signed the contract, and
which was a lot of money for you then, probably.
But that was before taxes. So that was the other thing, was like, I'm signing my entire life away, my name, my likeness, everything about me for $5,000 before taxes. Like if I would have had some guidance, I'm sure someone would have said, you know what, that's probably not enough and we need to do a little better here. But
at the time, did that feel like so much to you though?
I thought I was gonna fucking conquer the world. Like I was like, $5,000, what? And I didn't know I had to pay taxes on it. So I was,
oh my God, it's so cringy to think about. So fucking
cringy.
Oh my God.
But it's real. But it's like a very real thing that also it's just such a different world, right? Like everything is different and it changed so completely fast. Like you said, even with social media, it was just so accelerated that like no one could have caught up. No one could have figured this stuff out. It just happened the way it did. Okay, so with every guest we have in the podcast, we do a segment called Calling Bullshit, Calling BS. And we would like you to call some bullshit in your field, your expertise, in your life, what people think about you, whatever is bullshit you want to call out today.
Ooh.
I just said what I said.
What'd you say?
When I walked into office, I said, I think it's bullshit that McDonald's doesn't have snack wraps anymore. Sorry, but those are my life.
I agree.
right?
I
But
second
that's
that.
were snack wraps not like the best
They were a
food on their
staple
menu?
The
in my high school
greatest.
career.
I could eat like 5 of them right now.
Okay, also, I don't know if you guys remember the chicken fingers at Wendy's back in the day. Like, Wendy's started making chicken fingers. They were amazing.
Compared to their chicken nuggets, like
Yeah,
regular chicken
oh my
nuggets,
God, they were
that probably would be good.
life-changing.
I'm sorry, that wasn't in my field, but it is something that I think.
No, that counts.
I do have something. This may be controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I am a Latina, and I am in like, you know, social media and like the influencer field and stuff like that. And I don't feel like we get enough credit for anything that we do. I don't think we get paid enough
at all.
And I think that's something that really pisses me off, and it's been pissing me off like for the longest.
That's not controversial. That's fucking,
amazing.
that's true.
Yes.
It's 100% fucking true. That's, nobody gaslight you right now. You are absolutely correct.
And thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to say anything because I think we should leave just that.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a good one. All right. Hey, Kail, Vee, we cannot thank you enough. Mainly, we can't wait to hang out with you soon. We're all going to get together. Thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for calling some bullshit. Thanks for telling us your story. If you enjoyed this episode today, related, please send it out to a friend or loved one. Of course, you have to listen to Baby Mamas, No Drama. You guys also have the best merch. Where do people find your merch?
Love your merch.
Wait, you have the best merch. Can you tell people where to find all of your stuff and all your merch?
So we have our website, babymamasnodrama.com, and then you can also find our new merch collection on Podcast One's website.
Oh,
Amazing.
the best merch. If you're looking, you gotta stop here. Thank you for being here today. As always, please rate, review, subscribe. And if you listen today, don't forget, if you want to grow yourself, you gotta know yourself. Thanks for being here.
Thank you guys.